Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your King Clifford Jefferson, I send the Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jews, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know is in Christianity, he's called Jesus Christ, but we refer to King Edgar the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of, as the King of Salem, Melchizedek, or actually the one they call the Son of Man. They don't want y'all to get this message today, y'all. Yeah, good for that. We have here again from the English Third Temple Church with another marvelous lecture that I have for you today in regards to understanding the transition that we are about to go through here on this planet, as well as within ourselves. But once again, I'm a self-learned. I haven't been through any other school of thought in regards to what the topic is going to be about today. But somehow my ancestors have allowed me to come to this understanding. So as a result of that, I'm giving you this understanding so you can't say you didn't know or you didn't get the message. Okay? So without further ado, we're going to get started. So you can't say you didn't know. As you can see, everybody knows what that is, right? It's a bomb. It's a bomb you see there, all right? Not just a bomb, but a ticking time bomb. And we need to understand that the world that we're living in now is a ticking time bomb, and when I say a ticking time bomb, it's set by those who gave it the time to go off, all right? They pretty much set a time for it to go off. Not just to create this bomb, but Earth is pretty much made of the same elements that a bomb is created from, and it has an arbitrary time to go off, as we see it going off in this day and time. Volcanoes erupting. All right. We was talking about the Dutch in the Netherlands, and they just had a flooding there as well, a real bad flooding. And we need to understand that the world is in a trying time, very trying time, and we need to choose our time and wisely. And if you're doing such a thing, you should be listening to me today, all right? Because those of the past didn't waste their time and follow. They waste their time in trying to know, trying to discover, and discovery means to search. What are you searching for? Understanding, not just understanding of things going on, or you should be about things that are going on this planet, but your understanding should be based off the things and know where and which you came from where you originated, and that's my job to clear that up. Some of you might not like that clarity, but hey, so be it. But you have a chance to respond to your remarks, how you feel about the information that's being given. If it's not sound, you also have the opportunity to prove it wrong, but nothing's being said, so as they say, pretty much if you don't rebut, pretty much agreed upon that, case closed. All right, so as you can see here, you have a bomb, you have a ticking time bomb at that, and there's a fuse on the bomb. And apparently the fuse has been lit, all right? the fuse has been lit, and you notice that the bomb is black. So the bomb is symbolic of what we call matter, or what we call mass, because this bomb is encompassed with explosive material, what we call elements, all right? And as you can see, you know, it's symbolic of an explosion. Something's going to happen. And when that explosion go off, the characteristics of this bomb will no longer be no more. All right. So that's also symbolic in what we call quantum physics or quantum mechanics in regards to Albert Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared. All right. Which if you watch the video that was posted, which is a couple seconds, you should watch that video. It's really good. But it's based off Albert Einstein's theory about the worm theory of what we call the vacuum. And the vacuum is pretty much, as we said, transmission medium to signals, you know. So as you can see, the shape of the bomb is in a circular, but at one end of the bomb, there's an output, you know what I'm saying? That's symbolic or what we call the vacuum. All right, the transition from what we call three-dimensional to fourth-dimensional, because a circle becomes three-dimensional from zero-dimensional. All right, from zero-dimensional to one-dimensional to two-dimensional, three-dimensional, on to fourth-dimensional. So the explosion of this bomb, which is arbitrarily set in time to go off, goes into a fourth-dimensional, which means that it is no longer composed of the matter that it was composed of. All right, but it still exists. This is what we call energy equals matter equivalence. Energy equals matter is equivalent. Energy and matter is equivalent, all right? But it's all upon how you see the equivalency, which I'm going to show you today. I'm not going to show you, I'm just going to verify what they have verified based off their understanding of what we call quantum mechanics, mathematics, geometry, physics, however you want to metaphor you want to use for it, it all means the same. It all goes back to one point, I transition. All right. So we're going to watch a quick video of a professional at quantum mechanics, and she's going to relate the questions that's going to be asked of her in regards to the afterlife. All right. Albert Einstein theory of E equals mc squared deals with what we call relativity to the afterlife. Okay, and let's hear from this professional before I go any further. Go any further. All right. I go there. Let's visit this one. 1 Corinthians. I don't want to miss anything, so I'm gonna take my time so that I don't miss anything that I have to talk about today, so that you can understand what I'm trying to get across to you, because this is all a message to you. This is a message, all right? I'm giving a message, and my obligation is to pass the message on to you, all right? The Bible is a message from God to those who are soon to be God's people. Everybody read the Bible, that doesn't mean they're God's people, all right? 1 Corinthians 15, verse 52. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Okay? In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and will be changed. This goes back to what we call Revelation 21, verses 24 to 27. All right, dealing with the rapture, all right, dealing with the New Jerusalem, all right, dealing with the saints, all right. This all pinpoints one certain thing, that God's people will join God in the hereafter, all right. God's people will join God in the hereafter. You can take that in the abstract, or you can take it in the concrete. I'm going to give it to you, all right. Oh, please don't tell me out. Erase that. Oh, no, I didn't. Shh. We're going back to the Bifrost. All right. You know, the Bifrost was a bridge, all right, in Asgard that leads to Middle Earth. All right. Middle Earth represents Earth and Asgard represents the heaven. All right. And the only way to get there was by a medium, a transmission medium. And a transmedium, it's, as we say, is lightning. And once the medium or the vacuum or the wormhole, whatever you want to call it, is closed, then that's the sound of thunder. You notice when Thor came down and he got to wherever he went to, you had heard a thundering sound. So in etymology and origin of the Bifrost, which is a Norseman origin, which is a folklore from Norseman origin. We know the Norsemen were what we call the Danish people who invaded the Anglo-Saxons. All right. If you go back to what we call the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages, etc. Notice they call it the Dark Ages. Scholarly Andy Oshkar suggests that Bifrost may mean shimmering path. He notes that the first element, all right, we know the first element meaning a moment, all right. The first element meaning a moment, all right. We're moving on to what we call the fifth element, because fifth element is what we call ether. And moving on to what we call the fourth dimension, what we are in now, what we call the third dimension. And it suggests that fleeting nature of the rainbow, which he connects to the first element of the Bifrost. The Old Norse word meaning to shimmer or to shake. And as I said, when Thor came down to wherever he wanted to get to here on Earth, there was like a shaking or a thunder from that lightning striking. So we know when lightning hits something, there's a thunder from it. You know what I'm saying? There's a rumbling sound. All right. It says nothing, noting that the element invokes notions of the luxurious sheen of the bridge. Austria's German Rudolf Simic says that the Bifrost either means a swaying roll to heaven, also citing Bifra or Bilros is the original form of the two, which Simic says is likely the fleeing glance of a rainbow, possibly connecting the bill, perhaps meaning moment wakening, moment weak point. All right. So we know that when it said here, moving to shimmer or to shake, that we know that's symbolic of what we call a wormhole. We know when they go into a wormhole, it moves like a snake. All right. It moves like a snake. All right. A shimmering path suggests the fleeting nature of the rainbow, which connects to the first element, meaning to shimmer or to shake, knowing that the elements evoke a notion of a lustrous sheen of a bridge. All right. So once again, once you go back to the movie Thor, you will see it. It's also said, Austrian Germanist Rudolf Simic says that the Bifrost either means to swing, roll to heaven, meaning to sway, moving, a circular motion. All right. And not circular motion, but like a motion that sways. All right.
Let's talk about the physics of dead grandmothers. So I was sitting in a taxi together with a young man, and when I told him I'm a physicist, he said, "Oh, can I ask you a question about quantum mechanics?" So I thought, well, okay, go ahead. And he said, a shaman told me that my grandmother is still alive because of quantum mechanics. Is this right? I had to pause for a moment and try to understand. And after thinking about this for a while, I came to the conclusion it's not entirely wrong.
So she said it's not entirely wrong. Now we know we are made of matter, right? But you notice the screen behind her is in the square. The square represents fourth dimensional, which you move to from three-dimensional. All right, you move from three dimensions to fourth dimensional. We know fourth dimensional is known as we call what they call it. We'll discuss in a second. You know, I got a lot to talk about, so a lot slips my mind. So forgive me. So let's watch the video.
But the thing is, it's got nothing to do with quantum mechanics. It's actually got something to do with Einstein's theory of special relativity. It's all about the reality of time. It's all about the question of whether the present moment, this now which we experience ourselves, whether this is of fundamental importance. A lot of things, like those big existential questions about afterlife, that physics can actually tell us something about. My name is Sabine Hassenfelder. I'm a physicist and research fellow.
If you notice, let me go back a little bit.
Go ahead. He said, "Oh, can I ask you a question about quantum mechanics?" So I thought, well, okay, go ahead. And he said, a shaman told me that my grandmother is still alive because of quantum mechanics. Is this right?
So a shaman told her that her grandmother is still alive because of quantum physics. All right, from as a result of quantum physics. All right.
I had to pause for a moment and try to understand. And after thinking about this for a while, I came to the conclusion it's not entirely wrong. But the thing is, it's got nothing to do with quantum mechanics. It's actually got something to do with Einstein's theory of special relativity.
You see that? It has to do with Einstein's theory of special relativity. Relativity. All right. Past and the future. All right. It has to do with the past and the future. The future is not here yet, and the past it was behind us. All right. But there was no past and no future, as she explains. As she's going to explain, there is no past and there and no future. There is simply a view from the same point in time. From the same point in time, i.e. 0 point reference, i.e. 0 dimension, i.e. 0 point energy. All right, we're going to discuss those terms in a second.
It's all about the reality of time.
The reality of time.
Whether the present moment, this now which we experience ourselves, whether this is of fundamental importance. There are a lot of things, like those big existential questions about afterlife, that physics can actually tell us something about.
If you look at when the wormhole, look at the individual in the wormhole.
There are a lot of things, like those big existential questions about afterlife.
It's Asiatic, y'all. Look at that. That's an Asiatic. Y'all see that? This is a person of melanin who has melatonin. All right, we know what melanin is. This is a brother who has melanin. All right, melanin, very, 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 very important that you have melanin. All right, I'm going to show you.
My name is Sabine Hassenfelder. I'm a physicist and research fellow at the Frankfurt Institute for Advanced Studies. And I have a book that's called Existential Physics, A Scientist's Guide to Life's Biggest Questions.
Nowadays, more and more people are going solar and taking advantage of the benefits of a residential solar.
Sorry about that.
Before Einstein, time was this universal parameter. We all shared the same moment of time, the same moment of now that we could all agree on. But then Einstein came and he said, well, it's not that simple. And the major reason for this is that the speed of light is finite and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. It's the same for all observers. And this sounds like a really innocent assumption, but it has a truly fundamental consequence, which is fairly easy to understand actually. If you ask yourself whether you know if the screen in front of you is actually there right now. Naively you would say, yes, of course, it's there. I mean, I'm holding it in my hand or I see it directly in front of me. But we just learned that the speed of light is finite and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. So everything that you experience.
She said the speed.
So I thought.
She says the speed of light is finite and nothing can escape a wormhole. We know the speed of light is electromagnetism, or what we call electricity, which we know is a medium, a transmission medium, subject to the vacuum. And we know a vacuum, in lieu of what we call the transmission medium, can carry messages. All right, it carries messages. That's just what she's saying.
Well, okay, go ahead. And he said, a shaman told me that my grandmother is still alive because of quantum mechanics. Is this right? I had to pause for a moment and try to understand. And after thinking about this for a while, I came to the conclusion it's not entirely wrong. But the thing is, it's got nothing to do with quantum mechanics. It's actually got something to do with Einstein's theory of special relativity. It's all about the reality of time. It's all about the question whether the present moment, this now which we experience ourselves, whether this is of fundamental importance. There are a lot of things, like those big existential questions about afterlife, that physics can actually tell us something about. My name is Sabine Hausenfelder. I'm a physicist and research fellow at the Frankfurt Institute for Advanced Studies. And I have a book that's called Existential Physics, A Scientist's Guide to Life's Biggest Questions. Before Einstein, time was this universal parameter. We all shared the same moment of time, the same moment of now that we could all agree on. But then Einstein came and he said, well, it's not that simple. And the major reason for this is that the speed of light is finite and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. It's the same for all observers. And this sounds like a really innocent assumption, but it has a truly fundamental consequence, which is fairly easy to understand actually. If you ask yourselves whether you know if the screen in front of you is actually there right now. Naively you would say, yes, of course, it's there. I mean, I'm holding it in my hand or I see it directly in front of me. But we just learned that the speed of light is finite and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. So everything that you experience, everything that you see it as it was a tiny little amount of time in the past. So how do you know that anything exists right now? What do you even mean by now? So this is the problem that comes up in Einstein's theory of special relativity. And Einstein tried to construct a notion of now in this new theory, and he failed. So imagine you're looking straight ahead and there's a train going through to your line of sight, say from the left to the right. And on the train there's your friend, so let's call her Alice. Now, let's also imagine that at the exact moment that Alice, who's standing in the middle of the train, is looking straight at you, there are light flashes going off on both ends of the train. The question is, did these light flashes happen at the same time? Now, if you want to answer this question looking at the train, that's pretty straightforward. There are those light flashes going off. They both come from sources that are the same distance from you. So of course you see them at the same time. But how does the same thing look from Alice's perspective? The light flashes go off, but while the light travels towards her, she's moving towards one of the light sources and away from the other. So the one path of the light is shorter and the other one is longer. So from Alice's perspective, the light flash from the front of the train arrives earlier than the one from the back. So she would say that they did not happen at the same time. And now the important point is that this is relativity. Neither of them is right and neither of them is wrong. They both have an equally valid perspective. And what do we conclude from this? Well, we conclude from this that there is no unambiguous notion to define what happens now. It depends on the observer. So they're both right. And if you follow this logic to its conclusion, then the outcome is that every moment could be now for someone. And that includes all moments in your past. And it also includes all moments in your future. So this impossibility to define one notion of now that we all agree on is called the relativity of simultaneity. And it's super important because it tells us that fundamentally this experience of now that we all share is meaningless.
Okay. This meaning that we all share now
Cashback is good.
is meaningless. Why?
Even better.
Because we're just spectators of what we're observing from our perspective. Everyone has their own perspective. All right? Everyone has their own perspective. Whether you had a perspective or whether you have a perspective now, or you will have a perspective in the future, it comes from your own perspective. Everyone that was created from matter, right, from that which existed from nothing, are simply spectators. And we're going to go step by step to understand this. All right. On back to Einstein's theory, E equals mc squared explained. Everybody better listen. You don't have to go to a university to understand this. All right, you don't have to go to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get a master's degree in this, because you are the masters. It all comes from you. All right. This is information. This is the light as light beings. Energy, i.e. E equals mc squared. Explain. E equals mc squared. It is the world's most famous equation. But what does it really mean? What does it really mean? Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. We know squared means fourth dimensional. We know when you go into fourth dimensional, that means that the only way you can get there is by the speed of light. As they talked about the speed of light, it happens by way of what we call transmission medium. And the transmission medium is what we call a wormhole. In order to go through a wormhole, you must have what we call antimatter. Antimatter is the opposite of what we call matter. That goes into understanding what we call 0-point energy, which we discussed today. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. On the most basic level, y'all, the equation says that energy and mass, in quotations, matter, are interchangeable, i.e. interchangeable. They exist at the same time. They are different forms of the same thing. You hear that? Different forms. Deformation. Deformation is the change from the original form. Under the right conditions, energy can become mass and vice versa. So that means energy can become mass and mass can be turned back to energy, i.e. energy can become matter and matter can be turned back to energy, all right? And energy is electricity, all right? Energy is electricity, all right? It says we humans don't see them that way. How can a beam of light and a walnut say be different forms of the same thing, but nature does. All right, so let's understand this. So why would you have to multiple, we ain't gonna get to that. Let's just move forward with the understanding and explanation of equal energy and mass is equivalent. Let's understand this. In physics, i.e. quantum physics, i.e. quantum mechanics, in physics, mass energy equivalence is the relationship between mass and energy. I.e. once again, is the relationship between mass and energy and a system rest frame where the two quantities differ only by a multiplicative constant and units of measurement, i.e. distance. And distance, you create mass, all right, i.e. matter, all right? The principle is described by the physics Albert Einstein formula E equals mc squared, and a reference frame where the system is moving its relativistic energy and relativistic mass instead of rest mass obeys the same formula. All right, once again. In physics, mass energy equivalence is the relationship between mass and energy and a system rest frame where the two quantities differ only by a multiplicative constant of the units of measurement. All right, by the constant unit of measurement. The principle is described by the physics Albert Einstein formula. Energy is equal to mass, i.e. matter constant, to the speed of light. All right, and the reference frame where the system is moving, its relativistic energy and relativistic mass instead of rest mass obeys the same formula. And we know light is finite. There's a cutoff point in light. When lightning strikes, that's a vacuum. When that vacuum closes, you hear the thunder. All right. Let's go here. So it says, in a reference frame where the system is moving, its reelastic energy and reelastic mass instead of rest mass obey the same formula. So let's go here. Mass and special relativity, i.e. the theory of relativity by Albert Einstein. All right, E equals mc squared. The word mass has two meanings in special relativity. All right. The word mass has two meanings in special relativity. So make sure you guys see this. Invariant mass, also called rest mass, is an invariant quantity which is the same for all observers and all reference frames, while the relativistic mass is dependent on the velocity of the observer, i.e. the speed. Velocity means the speed. According to the concept of mass energy equivalence, i.e. E equals mc squared, invariant mass is equivalent to rest energy, while relativistic mass is equivalent to relativistic energy, also called the total energy. All right. There you have it for yourself. The term relativistic mass tends not to be used in particles and nuclear physics. It is often avoided by writers on special relativity in favor of referring to the body relativistic energy. In contrast, invariant mass is usually referred to over rest energy. The measurable inertia and the warping of space-time by a body in a given frame of reference is determined by its relativistic mass, not really its invariant mass. For example, photons have zero rest mass, but continue to the inertia and waves and gravitational field of any system containing them. Okay, so this takes us to what we call 0-point reference. Or what we call 0-point energy. We talked about this yesterday. Quantum mechanics. All right, quantum mechanics. Before we do that, let's go here. No, we'll go here. Point energy. Where did it go? Here we go. Zero-point energy is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical system may have. Unlike classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state as determined by a Hilbert uncertainty principle. Therefore, even at absolute zero, atoms and molecules retain the same vibrational motion. Atoms, what is it? Atoms, what was that? 0-point energy is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical system may have. Unlike its classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state as described by the Hilbert uncertainty principle. Therefore, even an absolute zero atom and molecules retain some vibrational motion. Apart from the atom and molecules, the empty space of the vacuum also has these properties. According to quantum field theory, the universe can be thought of not as isolated particles, but continuous fluctuating fields. Matter fields whose quanta are fermions, leptons, and quarks, and force fields whose quanta are boson, photon, and gluons. All these fields have 0-point energy. These fluctuating 0-point fields lead to a kind of reintroduction of an ether in physics. Since some systems can detect the existence of this energy, however, this ether cannot be thought of as physical medium if it is to be Lorentz invariant, such that there is no contradiction with Einstein's theory of special relativity. So when you're talking about quarks, you're talking about energy, but energy is composed of a cell. So not just the genealogy of us as beings of mass, three-dimensional, but we must go back to the genealogy of the cell. All right, we must go back to the genealogy and the origin of our cellular structure, our makeup, because that's important as well. Hell, if Albert Einstein did it, we must do it as well, because this determines our understanding about our past and our future. All right, our past and our future means nothing Our past and our future means nothing. It's only a reference point in lieu of us being or visiting in this particular makeup, i.e. called matter. But there's a point when this matter won't be anymore. Because of a time when it says time there was when man was not, but the life of time when man began, the time when man will be no more. And we know man is energy, i.e. ether. All right, that goes back to ether, what we call theories, which we'll get back into. We'll go to it right now. Because since we're dealing with 0-point energy, let's go to it. We talked about this yesterday. As you can see, 0-point radiation. When you say radiation, we're talking about ultraviolet rays. All right. When you talk about ultraviolet rays, you go into history dealing with melanin. All right. You go into history of melanin. Then you go into history of what we call as I just said it, lineage of the cell. All right. The lineage of the cell, i.e. the zygote. We know the zygote is where we are originated from. All right. We're going to talk about this today, y'all. All right. We're going to talk about this today. All right. So as you can see, dark matter. All right. Wormhole. Only way you can go up that wormhole is to burn off this dark matter, because burn off the dark matter is the result of what we call, as they said in the ether theory, incinerating. All right. Incinerating, burning off, in order to go through what we call interstellar. You must be able to use antimatter, because antimatter is not matter, i.e. E equal mc squared. Energy matter is constant speed of light. So if you're going to go warp, then you can't be a matter, because matter is equal to energy, but it's without matter. So that means that you must go from, in order to go from fourth dimension, you must go back to the original makeup, which is what we call 0 dimension, i.e. point of origin. Point of origin. You all better understand what I'm talking about. Apparently, the people who I'm making reference to does. History. 0-point energy evolved from historical ideas about the vacuum. They just got finished showing you a picture about our brother going through a wormhole. A wormhole. Space, bending space and time. All right. To Aristotle, a vacuum means the empty, i.e. space, independent of the physical body, i.e. matter, i.e. E equals mc squared. Because energy and matter is equal. All right. But it must meet at the origin or point of origin, 0-point energy. All right. 0-point energy. He said he believed this concept violated basic physical principles and asserted that the elements of fire, earth, air, and water were not made of atoms, but were continuous. Why? Because we know that those elements, fire, earth, air, and water, is only subject to this terrestrial sphere, i.e. this globe. Outside of this globe is the etheric sphere, which we can't go. We can't go. In order to go there, to the ends of the universe, the only origin you can go there ends up what we call a wormhole. All right, that's the whole point, to travel to the inner boundaries of the universe. It says the inner boundaries of the universe. You can't go past the outer boundaries of the universe. You can't go there, because it violates the laws governing this makeup, as it just said. He believed the concept violated the basic principles and asserted that the elements of fire, earth, air, and water were not made of atoms, but were continuous. So it's continuous, that means it's perpetual. All right. Lightning is not perpetual. Lightning is our energy part. So lightning, what it says, lightning is not perpetual. It's finite. It's finite, because when lightning strikes, it serves only as a vacuum. It says that to atomists, the concept of the emptiness had absolute character. It was the distinction between the existence and non-existence. All right. Immortal and immortality. Mortal and immortal. Once again, mortal and immortal. We all search for immortality, right? Because we're mortal. So how you do that? Then you must go to the descendancy of immortality, and the origin of descendancy or immortality goes back to the lineage of what we call the cell, or our cellular structure, our makeup before we even became three-dimensional. Go back to the point of origin. Late in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that the evacuated region still contained thermal radiation, i.e. what we call UV rays. All right, we know UV rays come from the sun. In order for you to not withstand the suns of the stand the UV rays of the sun, i.e. the radiation, you must have melanin. You must have melanin. That's not what your shoe makeup is, but you must have melanin. We were created with melanin, right? But that's not what we are. But we were created with melanin to protect us as we stay on this sphere, i.e., the terrestrial sphere. This is not our home, but we are etheric being. Well, we must shine, which means we must incinerate. Just like that bomb I showed you, we're being contained. We're moving to fourth dimensional, and to move into fourth dimensional, as I said, light is finite. It said light is finite. Okay. It says late in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that the evacuated region still contained thermal radiation. The existence of the ether as a substitute for the true void was the most prevalent theory of the time. According to successful electromagnetic ether theory based off Maxwell electrodynamics, this all-encompassing ether was endowed with energy and hence very different from nothingness. The fact that electromagnetic and gravitational phenomenon was ether transmitted in empty space indicated that their associated ethers were part of the fabric of space. All right, it was a part of fabric. It was a part of the fabric of space. All right. Let's get into this. Cell lineage, or your cell ancestry. This is how you phone home, y'all. This is how you phone home. Cell lineage denotes the developmental history of a tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. Once again, cell lineage denotes the developmental history of a tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. Fertilized embryo, the impregnated embryo, all right? The impregnated embryo. This is based on the tracking of an organism cellular ancestry due to the cell division and relocation as time progresses, i.e. space and time. Space and time. This starts with the originator cell and finishes with the mature cell that can no longer divide. Y'all don't hear me. So just what we so-called see based on as we assume our birthright inherited from our mother and father, it goes deeper than that. It goes back to your cell, your cells, all right? Cell lineage denotes to the developmental history of a tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. This is based on the tracking of the organism's cellular ancestry due to the cell division and relocation as time progresses. This starts with the originator cell and finishes with the mature cell that can no longer divide, i.e. Unknot, i.e. 0 point of energy, i.e. What we call zero dimensional. All right, this is from whatever science you want to look at it, it all comes down to be the same. Let's deal with this. Neural crest, i.e. your cellular lineage or your cellular ancestry crest, where it comes from. All right, from the cellular level, the origin where you descend down from. All right, very, very important. That neural crest, i.e. neural crest, cells are temporary groups of cells that arises from the embryonic ectoderm, germ layer, and in turn gives rise to a diverse cell lineage, including melanocytes, craniofacial cartilage, and bones, smooth muscles, peripheral and enteric neurons, and glia. After the gastralization, neural crest cells are specific at the border of the neural plate and the non-neural ectoderm. During neuralization, the borders of the neural plate, also known as the neural folds, converge at the dorsal midline to form the neural tube. Subsequently, neural crest cells form neural crest cells from the roof plate of the neural tube undergo a epithelial to mesenchymal, pardon yourself, use some big words. Mesenchymal, pardon yourself, transition, delaminating from the neural epithelium and migrating to the periphery, where they differentiate into varied cell types. All right, so we know that the neural crest evolved from what we call cellular lineage. And we know the cellular lineage goes back into what we call your cells as a state of what we call fertilization. So we know the first cell is called, let's deal with it because it gave you the ancestry of the, or the lineage of the cell is the zygote. So let's look at the zygote. If I'm wrong, somebody please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Zygote, human growth and development. Everybody better understand this. Let's go into antimatter real quick. See this symbol here? I think I see it there. I'm not sure. Let's make sure. I've seen that somewhere. Hopefully we'll come back across it. Now, okay, all right. Zygote. As you can see, they show you simple, or what they call an unknot. Unknot. This is where the universe, unknot, matter, okay? Matter, a zygote formation egg cell after fertilization with a sperm. The male and female pronucleum are a conversion, but the genetic material is not yet united. You hear that? The genetic material is not yet united. All right? When you talk about this, you're talking about an unlink in mathematical terms. In mathematical field of knot theory, an unlink is a link that is equivalent under ambient isotopy to finitely many disjoint circles in the plane. As you can see, unlinked, they're not linked, right? They're not linked. They're not linked till you get into the history of understanding what we call gamia. No, it's not gamia. This is called. I got the term here. Linking numbers. That's what it's called. Linking numbers. All right. So we said, and the zygote. Let's go back to zygote. Zygote formation egg cell after fertilization with a sperm. The male is female pronuclea are conversion, but the genetic material is not yet united. All right. So this represents matter inside here. And now here's what we call antimatter. All right. Antimatter. Matter, antimatter. This is what takes place in here is what they call an ambient isotopy. All right. But you don't see no breakage in the ambient isotopy. No breakage at all. I'll show you in a second. A zygote from ancient Greek, joint yoke. To join to yoke is a eukaryotic cell formed by a fertilization event between two gametes. These zygote genomes is a combination of DNA in each gamete, if I'm pronouncing wrong, forgive me, and contains all of the genetic information of a new individual organism. Did y'all hear that? Contains all the information, genetic information of a new individual organism, i.e. the lineal descent, the ancestry of the cell. All right. In multicellular organism, the zygote is the earliest developmental stage. In humans and most of the exogamous organisms, a zygote is formed when the egg cell and sperm cell come together to create a new unique organism. In single cell organisms, the zygote can divide asexually by mitosis to produce identical offspring. So let's go to gametes. As you can see the picture, this is a unilink, right? No fertilization has taken place. They both exist in what they call dark matter. All right, dark matter. You hit that spark, boom, big bang. A gamete from ancient Greek means wife. Did you hear that? Ultimately, from ancient Greek, marriage. All right, marriage means tying a knot. I.e., mathematic theory is called the knot theory, ambient isotopy. Ambient isotopy. I'm going to show you again. Boom. Tying a knot. When you fertilize the egg, it creates all the information, i.e. DNA, i.e. lineocellular information of where you came from. All right? As you can see, from this, come this. Everybody see that? And a haploid cell that fuses with another haploid cells during fertilization in organisms that reproduce sexually. Gametes are an organism reproductive cell and also referred to a sex cell. All right, a sex cell and species that produce two morphologically distinct types of gametes, in which each individual produces only one type, a female. Hold on, parts out. And a species that produce two morphologically distinct types of gametes, in which each individual produces only one type. A female is the individual that produces the larger type of gamete, called an ovum, and the male produces the smaller type, called a sperm. Sperm cells are spermatozoa are small and motile due to the flagellum, a tail-shaped structure that allows the cell to propel and move. In contrast, egg cells or ovum is relatively large and non-motile, i.e. rest. They don't move. In short, a gamete is an egg cell, female gamete, or a sperm, male gamete. In animals, all of them, we're not talking about animals, we're just talking about us. All right, let's move forward. So we're talking about gamete with production of what we call the zygote. If you check the lineal cell, lineal descent, as you can see, gamete, zygote, embryo, fetus, infant, toddler, child, pre-adolescent, adolescent, emergent, and early adulthood. So you see the chain of events that's going on. You see the chain of events that's going on, everybody. All right, let's go back here. So you got a unilink, which is two circles, right? And it says in mathematical field of knot theory, a unilink is a link that is equivalent under ambient isotopy to finitely many disjoint circles in the plane. All right, let's go to ambient theory because this is an unknot. This is mathematics we're talking here. In mathematical theory of knots, the unknot, knot, or trivial knot is the least knot of all knots. Intuitively, the knot is a closed loop or rope without a knot tied into it or unknotted. All right. To a knot theorist, a unknot is an embedded typological circle in three-dimensional, and that the ambient isotopic that is deformable to a geometrically round circle and standard. All right, which goes to what we call ambient isotopy. Go. Ambient isotopy. A mathematical subject of typology and ambient isotopy, also called H-isotopy, is a kind of continuous distortion of an ambient space. For example, a manifold taking on a submanifold to another submanifold. For example, in knot theory, one considers two knots the same if one can distort one knot into the other without breaking it. Okay, so unbroken chain of line of what we call cell lineage. All right, cell lineage. So that brings on what we call line linking. Or linking, what does it say here? Linking numbers. In mathematics, the linking number is a numerical invariant that describes the linking of two closed curves. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? In mathematics, the linking numbers is a numerical invariant that describes the linking of two closed curves. All right, i.e., what they call unlinked. Unlinked, two closed circles. All right. So a numerical invariant that describes the linking of two closed circles in three-dimensional space. In three-dimensional space, that's called ambient isotopy, without breaking the line or the origin of the originator circle, i.e. point of origin. All right. Intuitively, the linking number represents the number of times that each curve winds around the other. In Euclidean, i.e. ambient space, i.e. space, the linking number is always an integer, but may be positive or negative depending on the orientation of the two curves. This is not true for curves in most three manifolds, where linking numbers can also be fractions or just not existing at all. See a couple of examples that they give you. The linking number was introduced by Gauss in the form of linking integral. It is also an important object of the study in knot theory, algebraic topology, and differential geometry. It has numerous applications in mathematics and science, including quantum mechanics, electromagnetism, and the study of DNA supercoding. All right. So what I'm saying is right on point, because in all theories of understanding of the origin of who we are, it can apply to any science. It can apply to any science of school of thought. All right. But the proper school of thought is going back to the origin where the school of thought originated from, because it all evolved the theories involving ether. All right. It involves ether. Let's go here. So since we talked about cell lineage, let's revisit that again. Cell lineage denotes the development history of the tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. This is based on the tracking of the organism's cellular ancestry due to the cell division and relocation as time progresses. This starts with the originator cell and finishes with the mature cell that no longer divides. All right? That no longer divides. Let's just get into the cell. All right? Since it said it deals with the tissue or organ. We know our tissue is our skin. Our skin, right? Melanin. Melanin from ancient Greek, melos means black or dark, is a broad term for a group of natural pigments found in most organisms. The melanin pigments are produced in this known specialized group of cells known as melanocytes. You hear that? Melanocytes. In humans, melanin is the primary determinant of skin color. It is also found in hair, the pigmented tissue underlying the iris of the eyes, the stria vascularis of the inner ear. In the brain, tissues with melanin include the medulla oblongata, if I'm saying that right, and pigment-bearing neurons. You hear that? Pigment-bearing neurons within areas of the brainstem, such as the locus coeruleus, and also occurs in the zona reticularis of the adrenal glands. All right. So let's go into melanocytes. So we know melanin means dark, right? Melanin means dark. Melanocytes are melanin. It's very close. Producing neural crests. All right, neural crests evolved from what they call cellular lineage. I just read it to you. I'm not going to go back to it, but you should make sure that you define every topic that you hear spoken today. Melanocytes are melanin-producing neural crest derived cells locating in the bottom layer, the stratum basale of the skin, i.e. the epidermis, the middle layer of the eye, the uvea, the inner ear, vaginal epithelium, meninges, bones, and heart. Melanin is a dark pigment primarily responsible for skin color. Once synthesized, melanin contains a special organelles called melanosomes, which can be transported to nearby keratinocytes to induce pigmentation. Thus, darker tones have more melanosomes present than lighter skin tones. Functionally, melanin serves as protection against UV radiation. Melanocytes also have a role to the immune system. All right. Since the action spectrum of sunburn and melanogenesis are virtually identical, they are assumed to be induced by the same mechanism. Did you hear that? The same action spectrum of sunburn and melanogenesis are vertically identical. They are assumed to be induced by the same mechanism. The agreement of the action spectrum with the absorption spectrum of DNA points towards the formation of cyclobutane pyrimidine dimers directed to DNA damage. All right, DNA damage. So it says that melanogenesis, i.e. melanocyte, i.e. melanin, is actually vertical or identical to what we call sunburn. What is sunburn? Sunburn is a form of radiation burn that affects living tissue, such as skin that results from the overexposure to ultraviolet, i.e. UV radiation, usually from the sun, all right? Usually from the sun. Common symptoms in the humans and other animals include red or reddish skin that is hot to the touch or it's painful, generally fatigue, mild dizziness, other symptoms including blistering, peeling skin, swelling, itching, and nausea, etc. All right, etc. All those who familiar with that, you know what I'm talking about. Causes. Sunburn is a cause by UV radiation from the sun, but may also result from artificial sources such as tanning lamps, welding arcs, and ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. And then It is the body's reaction to direct DNA damage from UVB. All right, we must understand what's going on here. So if it says that sunburn results from ultraviolet rays, and we know ultraviolet rays is results from the sun. All right, ultraviolet rays comes from the sun. All right, so that means that if we're made of melanin, and melanin go back to melanocytes, and melanocytes is contrast to what we call sunburn. That means that we are the sun, because we don't. The highest protection against ultraviolet rays is melanin. The higher protection against UV rays is what we call melanin, i.e., dark-skinned people. Let's go read it for yourself. Melanin. Coco, go in your cage. In your cage. Let me get to it. Melanin. But that brings you back to here. Okay, so it said sunburn is a result of UV rays, and UV rays are what we call radiation. All right, the sun gives off radiation, i.e., radioactive decay. All right, once again, it's called radioactive decay. Let's look it up. Now, we don't go in the sun. We don't get radioactive decay, nor do we get sunburn. If anything, we just get darker, all right? The darker you are, the more protection you have against ultraviolet rays. Because we know dark energy cannot absorb light, right? Dark energy or dark matter cannot absorb light. Only thing it does is it act as a, what we call a transmission medium, all right? A wormhole. Radioactive decay, also known as nuclear decay, radioactivity, radioactive disintegration, or nuclear disintegration, all right? That means incinerating is the process by which unstable atomic nucleus loses energy by radiation. A material containing unstable nuclei is considered radioactive. Three of the most common types of decay are alpha, beta, and gamma decay, all of which involve emitting particles. The weak force in the mechanism that is responsible for beta decay, while the other two are governed by electromagnetism and nuclear force. You hear that? Nuclear force. All right, so let's go back here. Mass energy in physics. In physics, mass energy equivalence is the relationship between mass and energy, and a system rests frame where the two quantities differ only by the multiplicative constant of the units of the measurement. It said in a reference frame where the system is moving, its relativistic energy and relativistic mass instead rest mass obey the same formula. So as I said, energy is equal to mass. Energy is equal to mass. But the only way it's not equal as a result of what we call the vacuum. The vacuum, let's go here. 0 point energy. 0 point energy, is the lowest possible energy that quantum mechanical systems may have. Unlike classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state as described by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Therefore, even an absolute zero atom and molecule retains some vibrational motion. All right, retains some vibrational motion. Quantum fluctuation. What is that? In quantum physics, or quantum fluctuation, also known as a vacuum state fluctuation or vacuum fluctuation, is a temporary random change in the amount of energy in a point in space. A change in the amount of energy in a point in space. All right. They are minute random fluctuation in values of the field, which represents elementary particles such as electric and magnetic fields, which represents the electromagnetic force carried by a photon, W and Z fields, which carry the weak force, and gluon fields, which carry the strong force. All right, so this explains this more in detail. Let's go back to ether. Let's go elements. All right, your lineal cellular descendancy. According to ancient medieval science, ether alternate spelling includes aether, and ether, also known as the fifth element or quintessence. It's a material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. The concept of ether was used in several theories and explains several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. In the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space. All right, ether permeated space. They're talking about antimatter. Once again, they're going back into antimatter because we know, as I said, what was it? 0 point energy. 0 point energy, yes. 0 point energy deals with the point in lieu of what we call the vacuum, because according to the term ether elementary understanding, it was known as the fifth element. It's the material that fills the region of the universe beyond terrestrial sphere. The concept of ether was used in separate theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. And in the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. That's called a wormhole. That is called a wormhole. But evidence for the presence of such medium was not found in Michelson-Morley experiment, and this result has been interpreted to mean that no luminiferous ether exists, i.e. in the illuminated ether, i.e. no person to represent that ether, i.e. descendant of the ether, because they are not descendants of the ether. It said it represented which light can travel through a vacuum, which goes to what we call transmission medium. Transmission medium is a system or substance that can mediate the propagation of signals for the purpose of telecommunication, i.e. telecommunication. Y'all heard of that word, speaking without talking. Speaking without talking. Let's just define it. I didn't even see that word last time. Telecommunication, often used its plural form, is the transmission of information by various types of technology over wire, radio, optical, or other electromagnetic systems. You hear that? other electromagnetic system. We talk about ether, y'all. It has its origin in the desire of humans for the communication over a distance greater than the feasible with the human voice. But with a similar scale of expediency, thus slow systems such as postal mail are excluded from the field. All right? A transmission medium, as we can see. It says that transmission medium serves as a form of telecommunication. All right. Signals are typically imposed on waves of some kind suitable for the chosen medium. For example, data can modulate sound, and transmission mediums for sound may be air, but solids and liquids may also act as a transmission medium. Vacuum or air constitute a good transmission medium for electromagnetic waves such as light and radio waves. You hear that? Such as light and radio waves. You know that light, we know that air, earth, fire, and water are subject to this terrestrial sphere. But we know energy is not. Energy is the transmission medium. Light is the transmission medium because light is finite. All right. Once it gets to where it needs to get to, then it exists and it's in a state of its true and most purest form. And that's etheric being. How we know that? Let's go back to etheric theology. Because we know based off etheric theology, and as far as what we call dark, well, as I said, point 0 point energy, it says that, let's read what it says, energy replaced space. It still exists. Yeah. So I ain't saying nothing foreign. They agree with me. Late in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that the evacuated region still contained thermal radiation, i.e., UV radiation, i.e., what we call ether. That's what you call ether. The existence of ether as a substitute for a true void. So wherever there's a void in matter, exists ether, i.e., antimatter, i.e., 0 point energy. According to the successful electromagnetic ether theory based upon Maxwell electrodynamics, this all-encompassing ether was endowed with energy and hence very different from nothingness. The fact that electromagnetic and gravitational phenomena were easily transmitted in empty space indicating that their associated ethers were part of the fabric of space itself, i.e. antimatter. You need antimatter to travel through space and time, i.e. a wormhole, i.e. a transmission medium. If you're going through a wormhole or what they call a black hole, you're going there for some reason. To those who maintain the existence of the plenum of philosophical principle, natural abhorrence of a vacuum was a sufficient reason for imagining an all surrounding ether. Ether were invented for planets to swim in. You hear that? To swim in. So we go back to we'll go to in a second. The swim in, i.e. the sperm. All right, because sperm swim. The egg cell, i.e. the ovum, don't swim, it stays to constitute electric, atmospheric, and magnetic effluvia, i.e. What they call the ovum, to convey sensation from one part of our body to another, and so on until a space has been filled 3 or 4 times with ether, i.e. manifold. Ambient isotope. All right, the Trinity. Okay. The word in Homo great means pure fresh air or clear sky. It was thought to be pure essence that God breathed, filling the space. God breathed, filling the space. That space was filled with air in which we breathe. Did you hear that? God breathed, filling the space where they live, analogous to air breathed by mortals. So air and ether is not the same. Air, along with the other three elements, are confined to this terrestrial sphere, i.e. this globe, i.e. this point of origin. All right, but the dot had to get to somewhere. Had to get to somewhere. Ether is related to incinerate, to intransit, to burn, to shine, meaning people with a burnt black facade. All right, when you put on Vaseline, you shine. Even when you don't put on Vaseline, you shine. All right, you shine. Ether also falls into what we call the fifth element. The fifth element is what we call ether. I keep trying to tell you. We go back to the image. This is what we call space, right? It's what we call space. Zero dimensional. It's matter though, or what we call mass. Matter, mass. All right. But when it's called, before the matter got there, it was called nothingness. When I created, he created from nothingness, and we know matter was created from nothingness. So we know that air and ether is not the same, and we know that matter was created from ether. All right, matter was created from ether. Let's just prove it. Antimatter. All right. In modern physics, antimatter is defined as matter composed of antiparticles or partners of the corresponding particles. In ordinary matter, it can be thought of as matter with reverse charge, parity, and time known as CPT, reversal. Antimatter occurs in natural processes like cosmic rays, collision, and types of radioactive decay. But only a tiny fraction of these has successfully been bound together and experimented to form anti-atoms. Minuscule numbers of antiparticles can be generated as particle accelerators. However, total artificial production has been only a few nanograms. No macroscopic amount of antimatter has ever been assembled due to the extreme cost and difficulty of production, and handling. All right, production of handling. So if we know that antimatter is composed of radioactive decay, right? We know that. And we know radioactive decay is a result of what we call, just revisiting, sunburn. The result of sunburn. All right. And we know sunburn, if you get sunburn, which is a result of radioactive decay, which is called antimatter. Once again, if we know that if you get sunburn, and sunburn is a result of lack of what we call melanin, and melanin is called melanocytes, and melanocytes is synonymous with what we call sunburn. Once again, y'all just don't hear me. Melanin protects you from sunburn, which we are composed of, because melanin means darker color, dark, right? And we know that on the ether theology, in mythology, or from whatever principle you want to understand it from, ether, it was here before matter. Ether is a form of antimatter, right? And antimatter is a form of radiation. Let's hear it again, because I can't believe I just said that again myself. So everybody can see. 0 point energy. We're going to do it from here. 0 point energy, because according to E equal mc squared, energy and matter is the same. You got matter and you got antimatter, right? You got matter and antimatter. And you say antimatter, you're not talking about air. Because it's confirmed right here. 0 point energy involved from historically, make sure you see it. I'm going to keep knocking you on the head with this. 0 point energy involved from historical ideas about the vacuum to Aristotle's the vacuum, the empty, i.e. space, independent of matter. Independent of matter, i.e. the body. He believes this concept violated basic principles, basic physical principles, and asserted that the elements, i.e. we know ether is an element. Ether is not fire, air, earth, or water. So he said, he asserted that the elements of fire, air, earth, and water were not made of atoms, but were continuous. Why? Because he's discussing ether. He's talking about ether. All right. Later in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that the evacuated region still contained thermal radiation. Thermal radiation. The existence of ether as a substitute for a true void was the most prevalent theory at the time. So the most prevalent theory at the time in regard to that void space was thermal radiation, i.e. ether. What is thermal radiation? Thermal radiation is electromagnetic radiation generated by the thermal motion of particles in matter. All right? We ain't talking about matter, we're talking about antimatter. Thermal radiation is generated when heat from the movement of charges in the material, electron, and proton, and common forms of matter. Thermal radiation, what is that? Thermal radiation is generated when heat from the movement of charges in the material, electron, protons, and common forms of matter. It's converted to electromagnetic radiation. You hear that? It's converted to electromagnetic radiation. So you have the ability to convert. You have the ability to convert into antimatter, from matter to antimatter. Heck, if Dora can do it, we can do it. All matter with a temperature greater than the absolute zero emits thermal radiation at room temperature. Most of the emission is in the infrared IR spectrum. Particle motion result in charge acceleration of the dipole oscillation, which produces electromagnetic radiation. So when it's dark outside and they got those goggles on, they can see you based off the heat that you give off. Okay? Based off the heat that you give off, because they can't see you in the dark. They just go by your heat. Overview. Thermal radiation is the emission of electromagnetic waves from all matter that has a temperature greater than absolute zero. Zero energy, all right? Which is called 0 point energy. This is what we're talking about. Thermal radiation affects the conversion of thermal energy into electromagnetic energy. Thermal energy is the kinetic energy of random movements of atoms and molecules in matter. All matter with a non-zero temperature is composed of particles with kinetic energy. These atoms and molecules are composed of charged particles, protons, and electrons. All right? The kinetic interaction among matter particles result in charge acceleration and dipole oscillation. This results in electrodynamic generation of coupled electric and magnetic fields, resulting in the emission of photon radiating energy away from the body. As electromagnetic radiation includes visible light, will propagate indefinitely in vacuum. In vacuum. Y'all see the changes that's going on. Let's go back to antimatter. Oh, we did the antimatter. We know antimatter is a form of radioactive decay. And radioactive decay, the only way you can protect it from that UV ray or we say radioactivity is based off melanin. Right? It's based off melanin. Let's go back to that again. Melanin. You can't always stay. You gotta give up the ghost, right? You can't stay in the cell, right? Because it's told you that ether means to burn, to shine, to incinerate. To burn, to shine, to incinerate. All right? From ancient Greek, black dark is a broad term for a group of natural pigments found in most organisms. The melanin pigments are produced in specialized groups of cells known as melanocytes. And it said melanocytes, it says here, under melanocytes, which is also the same as melanin, since the action spectrum of sunburn and melanogenesis are virtually identical, they are assumed to be induced by the same mechanism. So let's define melanogenesis, because it said melanogenesis. We know genesis means the beginning, right? It means beginning, beginning. Let's search what this word means. Melanocytes. Same word, melanocytes. So everybody needs to understand that you are, because of your melanin and because of the melanocyte that exists within you, you and every other matter that exists on this planet are headed to a state of non-existence because you're moving to the fourth dimension. You're moving into the fourth dimension. And everything that moves to the fourth dimension is subject to that vacuum. Matter is subject to that vacuum. And we know matter under zero energy, what's it called? 0 point energy is the same as antimatter. So you move from matter, 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, on to what we call fourth dimension. And fourth dimension is to what we call the wormhole, meaning what we call space and time. It's called dark matter or dark energy. Dark energy. Let's hear what Albert Einstein got to say. Einstein cosmological constant. The cosmological constant is a constant term that can be added to Einstein's field equation, a general relativity, i.e. E equals mc squared, i.e. energy and matter is equal, is equivalent. All right? Matter can become energy and energy can become matter. If considered as a source term in the field of equation, it can be viewed as equivalent to the mass of empty space. The mass of empty space, which conceptually could be either positive or negative, or a vacuum energy. A vacuum energy. The cosmological constant was first proposed by Einstein as a mechanism to attain the solution to the gravitational field equation that will lead to a statistic universe effectively using dark energy to balance gravity. All right, so what is a vacuum energy? Vacuum energy is the underlying background energy that exists in space. So if it's space, that means there's nothing. And matter took the place of that space. Before that space existed, there was energy, i.e. 0 point energy. That 0 point energy before it became matter was called antimatter. All right? Vacuum energy is the underlying background energy that exists in space throughout the entire universe. The vacuum energy is a special case of 0 point energy that relates to quantum vacuum. Quantum vacuum. That means that everything that was in this, what we call terrestrial sphere, does not exist in 0 point energy, or what they call it, vacuum energy. Does not exist because something has to take the place of that matter. Something has to take the place for that matter. Going back to point, what it said, 0 point energy. Right, 0 point energy. Ether. I know you got tired of reading this, but I'll read it again. Later in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that evacuated regions still contained thermal radiation. The existence of ether as substituted for the true void was most prevalent theory of that time. So that thermal radiation, i.e. UV rays, and every other name you can call it, derives from the source called ether. All right? It evolves from the source called ether. 0 dimension. In mathematics, 0-dimensional topological space, i.e. space, is a topological space that has dimension 0 with respect to one of the several inequivalent notions of assigning a dimension to a given topological space, i.e. 0 dimension, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, on to 4th dimensional. All right, it's very, very simple. So zero dimension will be here. A zygote join yolk to join to yolk is a eukaryotic cell formed by fertilization events between two gametes. This zygote genome is a combination of the DNA in each gamete and contains all the genetic information of a new individual, i.e., going to what we call ambient isotope. Mathematics, don't lie. As you can see, from here is a zygote, all right? When fertilization comes, as a result of what they call what they call unlink, what's the name of they call it? Unlinked, right? Because the unlinked, you don't, unlink is, it doesn't, unlink meaning that they haven't linked up together, meaning they're not married, okay? They're not married, okay? So when we deal with marriage, we call it tying the knot. Tying the knot is subject to what we call knot theory. So when you're tying a knot, the only thing after that is what? Giving birth, right? Giving birth. Without breaking the family, you're giving birth to another member of the family, i.e. all the DNA as a result of the tying of the knot is passed to that child. It is passed to that child. Going back to linking numbers. In mathematics, linking numbers is a numerical invariant that describes the linking of two closed curves and the three-dimensional space. Intuitively, the linking number represents the number of times that each curve winds around each other, i.e. DNA. In Leucian space, the link number is always an integer, but may be positive or negative depending on the orientation of the two curves. As you can see, unlinked, when they linked, you have what they call the double helix, and going up, going on, and going on, and going on. All right. So I think I'm gonna come to my closing. I think I got something else to show you. So wormhole. A wormhole is a hypothetical structure connecting disparate points in space and time. Connecting points in space and time. We're talking about a trifold. All right. In order to make a trifold, you must have a break the unknot. Right? You must break the unknot. But we know under, as we just said, under what they said, what was that theory? Linking numbers, as they said in linking numbers, it contains all the information when you're creating a three-dimensional being. Right? It says in mathematics, the linking number is a numerical invariant that describes the linking of two closed circles in three-dimensional space. And truly, the linking number represents the number of times each curve winding around each other. Right? Winding around each other. And where's that at? Zygote. Yeah, right. Zygote, join yolk, to join to yolk. The zygote genome is the combination of the DNA of each gametite to contain all the genetic information of the new individual. So we go back to what we call the Unknot. And the Unknot forms a trifold. And as a result of, as they said, the zygote. All right, we know the zygote is unknotted, and you don't get to a trifold, i.e. a child, till that fertilization process starts. And that's based off the combination of both cells. All right, combination of both cells. One splits into two, as you can see right here. One splits into two, now you got three. From one, you got this, trifold. This is an example of birth. This is a prime example from knot theory, how birth is manifested. That's your creation here on this planet, but that's not the creation from where you originally came from as a etheric being, because before you created as matter from 0 dimension to 3-dimensional, there was a state of nothingness. Within that nothingness contained your parents, which was ether, all right, which was ether. You know what I'm saying? And they gave you the ability to be able to shine in the darkness. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness comprehended not. Once again, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness comprehends it not. All right? So as you can see, in order to make that transition, as etheric beings, you must understand your lineal descent based off the lineal cellular. And the understanding of linear cellular ancestry is based off the etheric elements. All right, that should be your school of thought. And I end on this note. Right here. According to ancient medieval science, all right, alternative spellings include aether, and ether, also known as the fifth element or quintessence. It is the material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. So if you have in you ether, because we know that melanin is we know that melanin itself under the ether theory has to burn and shine, which means the melanin, i.e. the matter, must be taken off of you to be your glorious, pristine self. All right? And on this plane, you exist. This plane in the universe is not the same plane. This plane in the universe is not the same plane. Still constituting what we call matter, i.e. dark matter. Still constitute dark matter. But dark matter is not ether. Dark matter is not ether. According to the ancient medieval science, ether, also known as the fifth element. So as they said in the ether theory, the four elements is fire, water, earth, and air. But we're talking about ether here, y'all. And ether, as I said, is the material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. So what is the terrestrial sphere? and Aristotle, sublunary spirit. In Aristotelian physics and Greek astronomy, the sublunary spirit is the region of the geocentric cosmos below the moon, consisting of the four classical elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Once again, the sublunary spirit is the region of the geocentric cosmos below the moon, consisting of the four classic elements: earth, water, air, and fire. The sublunary spirit was the rim of chanting nature, beginning with the moon up to the limits of the universe. Everything was permanent, regular, and unchanging. The regions of the ethers where the planets and stars are located. The region of ether where the planets and stars are located. Only in the sublunary spirit did the power of physics hold sway. Once again, only in the sublunary spirit did the power of physics hold sway. You cannot go beyond that rim. All right? But when you deal with ether, ether can go beyond that rim. Because ether represents what? The fifth element, right? And in the fifth element, known as ether, contrast to the other four elements, the concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light. And we know light, when going through a wormhole, is finite because apparently it has a gravitational pull from something. And in the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space, also subject to gravity, provided a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. And we know a vacuum enclosure a vacuum is a space devoid of matter. The word is derived from Latin adjective vacus for vacant or void. All right. Appropriation to such vacuum is a region with a gaseous pressure much less than the atmospheric pressure, i.e., what they call sublunary spirit. All right. Physics often discuss ideal test results that will occur in perfect vacuum, which they sometimes simply call vacuum or free space. All right. If it's free space, that means it's empty. And if it's empty, then that space is dependent upon what we call ether. It is used the term partial vacuum to refer to actual imperfect vacuum as one might have in a laboratory or in a space. In engineering, it applies. Physics, on the other hand, vacuum refers to any space in which pressure is considerably lower than atmospheric pressure. All right, as you can see it. That goes back to, I think it said, zero space energy, 0 point energy. All right, 0 point energy. And I think that's it, brothers and sisters. All right, so there you have it. I don't mean to be redundant in lieu of this lesson. At the same time, you need to understand that, you know, you don't have to have a master's degree or some type of license to understand something that was supposed to be made simple, because the citizens understood the obligation to their noble family here on this plane, as well as to their noble family here on the etherical plane. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we are obligated to remember. You know what I'm saying? And failure to not remember is a result of forgetfulness. You know what I'm saying? It's a result of forgetfulness. And if you forget your ancestors, they will forget you. And with that, I say peace.